Aloha. I'm going to do a walkthrough on the what if analysis. The very first one, we have a food truck. Food truck cost us 300 bucks a day to run. We can sell pizzas for 15 bucks at the food truck. It's going to cost us $8 per pizza. And I threw in a number just to start off with. If we have 50 pizzas sold, that means our net profit is going to be $50. And the way I had a calculated net profit, I'm going to click on this cell. It has the pizzas sold, number of pizzas sold times the price of the pizza. That's the revenue we have coming in. So if we sell 50 pizzas at 15 bucks a pizza, that means we're going to have that much money coming in. If we have that 750 or something like that, but we have to pay a bunch of money for that. Those pizzas we have to pay $300 for the use of the food truck. We also have to pay $8 per pizza. And so that's where the formula comes in of the revenue coming in B5 times B3. Then we subtract the 50 pizzas times $8 per pizza. That's the ingredients like the flour, the tomato sauce, everything that goes into the pizza. And then we also have the food truck price that we pay. That's where our net profit comes in at $50. And what happens if we want to see if we have some marketing campaign where we know we can increase the number of pizzas, or maybe we get charged if we go to different locations for our food truck, it's going to cost different amounts per day. And a what if scenario lends itself really, really well for calculating what those are. I kind of set up some tables and I formatted them just so they look nice. And when you initially set these up, they may not be formatted, but these are already formatted. When I do the single table, I put in some numbers right here, and really I could put in any other number. And then we can change them later on too. The important thing is getting it set up. Up here, I didn't put just $50. I actually made a reference to the net profit. And that's really important because that's a formula we want to use, and that's what we're trying to compute. So you want to put, when you do a what if, the single table, like single column table, you put that right there at the top. I'm going to come up, oh, this is kind of in the way a little bit. So you start off with the home screen. I'm going to come over to where it says data, right over here. And then I'll come over where it says data analysis, and I will click on that. And of those, I want the data table. Oh, before I do that, I need to select the stuff. Okay, this is where I want the table. So I'm going to click on the data table. And what does Excel tell us? See the results of multiple inputs at the same time. In this case, we just have a couple of inputs. I click on that. And what you want for this kind of a table, you want to leave this field blank. Don't put anything in there. This is the one where all the magic happens. Clear that out. So right here, I click on the input cells, and I got this little thing, and let's say I want pizza sold, number of pizzas sold. So that's B5. That's what we want for the input. So I will close it out. So the input cells, I mean, I guess I could have just typed in B5 or whatever that cell is, whatever reference you need to make to the cell that has the number of pizzas sold. That's used as an input into the net profit formula. I click OK. Now it gets populated. It looks like if I only sold 20 pizzas, the whole 160 bucks. And this is live. So really I could update this as I need it. If we sold 70 pizzas, that's going to be $190 or whatever value I put in here. These will update. What happens if I just sell 44 pizzas? We're going to make $8. You got to cover your cost. Well, here you have this one table. That's nice. But what happens if we sell different numbers of pizzas, or maybe we consider moving it to a different place? And depending on the location, we might have to pay different amounts for the food truck. And that's where we see in this table right here. And I've formatted it so it looks pretty. It doesn't always initially come out pretty like this, but anyways, do whatever you want when you're making your own table. So I have this two-dimensional table, and right here in the upper left-hand corner, the way I set this up, that's a reference to the net profit formula because we want to see how much money do we make with these different scenarios. And I input some values up here. If you have a food truck that only costs $100, one that costs 400, with some numbers in between, and different number of pizzas that could be sold. That was, I think I just did, what is that? Plus 15. Here I did plus 50. Yeah, I just did a bunch of formulas, but set it up however you want. This is the table we're going to have. I'll select all of this, click on what if analysis. We'll go to data table. The input cell, the row input. So you'll notice in the top row, I have the different food truck prices. So that's B2. I'm going to put that cell reference in there. Number of pizzas sold, the column input. That one is B5. I'll just type it in. I guess you could use the mouse if you want. Click OK. And now we've got these different amounts. So if a food truck varies at the prices and we sell potentially different. If you have a really nice spot, $400 spot, but you can sell 170 pizzas, that's 790 profit. That looks pretty good. And so this gives you some information that you can use when you think about things, when you're trying to make a decision. So there's some basic what if analysis. Let's look at what happened when you use the scenario. So I'm going to come over here to this other tab, and there's some houses. If we buy a house in Kaneohe, and we might have to take a mortgage out for almost $1 million, let EA take a bigger mortgage. And maybe you're trying to decide which one of these places would be best. And to help us make that decision, we need some information. And like, for example, what's our monthly obligation going to be? What's the total amount of payments that how much interest are we going to pay if we get this kind of a loan? And when you're varying things, so we're looking at, if you get a 15-year mortgage, you get a little bit lower interest rate, 30-year, you get higher. But what happens if you want to consider all the scenarios, all the mortgage payments for either 15 or 30 year, for all of these places? And I started building this up. Actually, here, let me put this in here. So if we have, for example, a loan amount is going to be, might be that one. Interest rate, if it's going to be a 15-year mortgage, it'll be that. Number of years, that's good. That's a 15. And then what's the payment going to be? We'll use a payment function. Payment, we want the APR divided by 12 for monthly payments. We want the number of years times 12 for the number of total payments, and the present value, we're going to pay down that amount. Okay, now this calculates a payment of about $8,850 or so. Total payments needed. If you're paying this amount every month, take that amount times 12, but you're doing that for 15 years. That means that with this Kaneohe loan, it's going to be about $1.6 million. How much interest is that? You simply take the total payments needed and subtract the loan amount. And therefore, you're paying the bank almost $600,000 for the privilege of borrowing their money. Now, these first three that we have, these are inputs. These last three are outputs. And so we'll change the inputs and which will generate a set of outputs. And we'll see that in just a moment. And you don't have to do this, but sometimes it's nice if you name these. So I'm up here, I'm just going to put loan amount. I'm going to rename this cell. If I click on this cell, then right here, I have the option of renaming the cell and give it a reference. It looks like when I started drawing on here, it lost all of that. So I'm going to type in loan amount, enter. Now it takes. The next one has the loan interest. I don't think that's used for anything else. I'll just go ahead and reserve that name. Loan years. That doesn't sound super interesting, but that works. This one I'll do payment amount total payments, plural. And this one I'll call total interest. And I did start to build this before. Oh, actually, let me show you something else too. So I've got this amortization table over here that's based off of what we have over here. So I did start to build this a little bit, and so you wouldn't sit here and have to watch me go through a bunch of repetitive information. But what I want to do is come up here and click on the scenario manager. So if I go to the data ribbon, the data ribbon is right here. And then I come over here and I want to click on the scenario manager. When I mouse over that, it gives me some information. Create different groups of values or scenarios and switch between them. That's what we want to do. We're looking at all these different options. Click on scenario, and this opens up. And I've got a few scenarios in here. I labeled these. You want to label whatever you want to label them, but I highly recommend labeling it something that will make sense to you. So I have Kaneohe 15, Kaneohe 30. I've got a 15-year scenario and a 30-year scenario, a 30-year mortgage. These are each different scenarios, loans that we possibly could be considering. And I've got Kaneohe down to Kahuku 15. So it's time. Let's add the Kahuku 30. I click on add. In this scenario, Kahuku 30. And the changing cells, these are the input cells. These are the 3 cells I want to change. So E2 to E4, hit enter, click OK. And okay, yep, that's fine. And then it wants me to put in some values. So Kahuku, we're looking at, because I renamed those cells, this has loan amount. Right here, it specifies loan amount, loan interest, loan years, but which looks interesting because if I had not renamed those, we'd be looking at, what is it, E2, E3, and E4, and those don't really make a lot of sense. But when you rename them as variables, it can make it easier to understand what we're doing. The loan amount for Kahuku is 1200. The interest rate for 30 years is that. And we want, actually, percent. Percent's really important. That's a lot smaller number. We want 30 years. I click OK. And now I've got the Kahuku 30 in there. But I still want to add the Laie 30 and the Laie 15 year. So I'm going to put those in here. Add Laie, let's see, 15. Changing cells E2 to E4. That looks good. Okay, there's a formula in there. Good for that. Loan amount, we want 1,250. And for 15 years, that's the right interest rate. And that's the number of years. So now we have the Laie 15 year. We just add the last one in here. Laie 30. We're changing cells E2 to E4. And 1, 2, 5. 7.08, and we want that for 30 years. And that should be 7.08%. Okay. Okay, now that we have all the scenarios built in here, there's a couple things ways we can look at this. One is, if I just click on any one of these, for example, I'm going to click on Laie 30. I'll click on, which is right here, and then I'll click on show. And what that will do is it will update this entire worksheet based off of the scenario of Laie 30. I click on that, and we see that because we put that on there, you'll notice that these inputs changed. And with these inputs, we have the corresponding outputs. Not only here, but this whole entire amortization table is based off of what gets input in there. And I just created the amortization table, not that you have to do that. I like to look at those things. I put in Kahuku 15, I click on show, and it gives me all of that. That's interesting looking at them one at a time. Maybe it's a good way for me to check that I put everything in right. Because if I put, for example, 6.75 or whatever, and I forgot to put the percent sign, that will be way too big. And if you need to, you can delete any of these, you can edit them. For example, if I click on edit, Haula 15, and it brings me up here, edit scenario, I'll keep that name, changing cells, click OK. And then this thing comes up and I can make sure I put the numbers in right. If I didn't put the numbers in right, this would be a great place to fix that. Okay, so that's how you edit the scenarios or delete the scenarios. And now that I have all of these, I'm going to show you something else that's pretty cool. If I click on the summary button, I'll get actually a nice pretty chart that shows all of the outputs from all the inputs that we have in here. And it looks like, what do I want in here? I'm going to click on these three cells right here. Yeah, these are the three outputs that we want in that scenario, E5 to E7, because it will, let's say I click OK, and it will build me this table. The result cells or the output cells. So by changing the cells in here, we have the current, well, actually that one's just an extra one. You can delete that one. But we have Kaneohe 15, there's, which has the loan amount, we have the interest rate, we have the number of years, output, which includes the payment amount, total payments have to be made, the total interest that have to be made as well. And it has for each of these scenarios, which means that if, like, for example, let's say my wife and I were trying to figure out which house to buy, and we narrowed it down to these homes and that were at these prices, and we might think about them. Okay, let's look at Light EA. 15-year has much better interest rate. Look how much less than total interest we're paying. But that's still 11. That's a lot of money every month. Oof, can't afford that. And there's our, if we got a 30-year mortgage, pay a lot more interest, but that's still a lot of money. And so that may help us think about, okay, if we did live way down in Kaneohe, that's going to be a 45-minute commute every day by car, but that's a much lower mortgage payment. And having information like this available means that you can make a better informed decision. Well, anyways, there's my little walkthrough on doing the what if analysis. You can apply this to all sorts of things. If you're buying a car or if you're buying whatever it is you want. Anyways, I hope this video was informative and useful to you.